Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you hadn't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, Dino and Feldway met in the Star Palace and discovered that the holy remains of Veldanava and Lucia had gone missing. At this point, two possibilities existed. One was that Ivarage had devoured the two holy remains. The other, something Dino feared far more, was that Veldanava-sama might have revived. In this episode, Ivarage would reveal her newly evolved, shocking form. Yes, she had taken on the appearance of Lucia, and Star King Dragon Veldanava would make his entrance in a world-ending fashion. Meanwhile, the Primordial Demons continued fighting side by side against Velzard in her stampede state, as they waited for Rimuru to arrive. So, let's get started. The perspective shifted to Demon Lord Luminous. At this moment, she was overlooking the hellscape before her. The battle was brutal, and the fate of humanity hung by a thread. Failure here meant no future whatsoever. For this reason, Luminous made her decision. Through thought communication, she delivered a declaration so intense it bordered on indoctrination. Even if one lost their limbs or exhausted all their magicules, they must not retreat. To find meaning in one's own life at such a moment should be considered the greatest fortune of all. On a battlefield at the edge of the apocalypse, Luminous had grasped human nature with absolute precision. People longed to find value in their lives. Under normal circumstances, such words would be dismissed outright. But when confronted with the terror of inevitable death, Luminous bestowed upon death a grand justification. It was not merely encouragement. It was a form of spiritual sorcery. And indeed, her words allowed the collapsing front lines to regain their sense of strength and justice. Thus, the entire battlefield was engulfed in a strange, burning fervor, the tension rising and intensifying with every passing moment. With the support of Benimaru's reinforcements, the three major fronts finally stabilized. On the northern front, Louis Valentin, Adelman, and Gadra, supported by newly arrived Mai Furuki, finally managed to withstand Habataki's spatial jump attacks. On the western front, Cheyenne, together with the now reformed Saare and others, coordinated with the giants to suppress Kakeashi. On the southern front, Ultima, just as we expected, entered her unstoppable mode. Here, the author even described Luminous's awe. Ultima's strength was on a completely different tier. Compared to her, the other heroes were less combat power and more like assistants, clearing out the small fry. The human armies kept cutting down the cryptids, and the battle seemed to be turning in their favor. However, on the eastern side of the battlefield, the greatest threat of all, the evil god Ivarage, had not moved an inch. The stillness was horrifying. Luminous's pride, her ultrasense skill, had been sounding its highest level alarm in this direction. And then, suddenly, the warning vanished. For a moment, Luminous thought the crisis had passed, but she immediately realized she was wrong. This was the silence before the storm. All sound ceased, and in its place came a giggle, childlike, innocent, yet saturated with malice. Luminous's mutter revealed the truth. True evil can be terrifying to this extent. Yivaraga did not destroy out of hatred. She held no malice. She simply chased curiosity and pleasure. That was why she was called an enemy that must be annihilated. You cannot negotiate with a tsunami, nor bargain with an earthquake to achieve peace. To Ivarage, this world had no meaning at all. If her goal was to destruct, then humanity's desperate resistance was nothing more than a game meant to entertain her. And then, the most despair-inducing moment arrived. Ivarage aura changed. She descended slowly to the ground, her form undergoing a dramatic transformation. As the light faded, what appeared before everyone was a stunningly beautiful woman. King Gazelle asked Luminous whether she recognized this woman. Luminous did not answer, because although the face was unfamiliar, there was an undeniable sense of déjà vu. She looked almost like an adult version of Demon Lord Milim. At that moment, Masayuki reacted violently. No, more accurately, the memories belonging to Emperor Rudra, slumbering inside him, awakened. He instinctively cried out his little sister Lucia's name, But importantly, Masayuki did not lose his sense of self. According to the narration, he could even converse with Rudra within his consciousness, asking who Lucia was while making his own comments. Personally, I feel this strongly foreshadowed that Masayuki and Rudra would eventually fight side by side. Ivarage herself had never met Lucia. If she had taken on this form, it was likely because she had absorbed Lucia's holy remains, or possibly because Veldanava had given her this appearance directly. For now, the latter seemed more likely. Of course, we would know the exact details very soon when Volume 23 of the light novel released. If Ivarage transforming into Lucia had been a visual shock, then what happened next was psychological terror. Along with Ivarage's transformation, her three subordinates, the cryptid generals, also completed their final evolutions. Their power levels were so high that even Velgrin, who stood at the pinnacle of the world, could not estimate them. Even the corpse of Jahil, which Yuki had slain and left discarded on the ground, began to writhe unnervingly. At this moment, we still had no idea whether the three cryptid generals had taken humanoid or monstrous forms, so we would refrain from showing any related images for now. Finally, an unnoticed, mysterious presence gazed down from far above the battlefield. A quiet whisper echoed, declaring the revival of his wife and anticipating the imminent arrival of his daughter. The time for a family reunion was drawing near, and he would soon choose only those worthy of survival. There was no doubt the voice belonged to Veldanava, and his goal, just as we described in the previous episode, appeared to be the destruction of this world. Yet the people on the battlefield had no idea what catastrophe was about to descend upon them. Next, let's shift our perspective to the battlefield of Eurazania. We had covered the details of this battle thoroughly back in episode 142. To summarize briefly, Gabiru arrived just in time and created a miracle. Carrera successfully broke free from her frozen state, and with her notoriously terrible temper, she immediately unleashed her finishing move, Judgment Bullet, which could be used only once per day, firing straight at the disgusting aura of Twilight Valentine. And the only reason this strike landed successfully was Testarossa's flawless support. Testarossa instantly understood Carrera's intention and used the void energy to forcibly carve out a narrow path through Velzard's otherwise impenetrable defensive field, just wide enough for the bullet to pass through. With Twilight Valentine erased, Velzard completely lost her rationality and fell into pure, instinct-driven rampage. She revealed her true form as the Frost Dragon. The sight could only be described as terrifyingly beautiful. Her scales were deeper and more radiant than white pearls. Her once deep ocean blue eyes had turned into brilliant gold as her power fully awakened. A pure white radiance enveloped her body, and her overwhelming dominion radiated through the battlefield. She was no mere living being. She was the very embodiment of natural law, a walking absolute zero. To confront such a natural disaster, the strongest Demon Lord Guy stood at the front lines, taking on the main pressure. Primordial Yellow Carrera and Primordial Blue Rain attacked from the flanks, while Primordial White Testarossa provided full battlefield support. Despite the crushing terror Velzard emanated, none of the fighters' expressions showed even a hint of fear. Because through Testarossa, the uplifting news of Rimuru-sama's return had already spread to everyone present. Guy complained irritably that since Rimuru had returned, he should hurry over instead of taking his time. Naturally, Testarossa could not allow even a hint of doubt toward Rimuru-sama. She calmly replied that Rimuru-sama had his considerations, and the priority now was restoring Milim-sama's sanity. Her answer was airtight, redirecting the topic, emphasizing strategic hierarchy. And all the while, Testarossa continued maintaining her nihilistic world, using the power of void to cancel out Velzard's attacks and protect everyone on the battlefield. Carrera also held absolute trust in Rimuru-sama, backing Testarossa without hesitation. She had no idea Rimuru had gone missing earlier, but she understood the battlefield perfectly. Even while frozen solid, her consciousness had covered every inch of the battleground. Her ability to instantly detect Twilight Valentine's presence and fire Judgment Bullet was the proof. It was no surprise that Testarossa and Carrera blindly trusted Rimuru. But what came as a surprise was someone else stepping up to defend Rimuru, the primordial blue rain. Rain urged Gi-sama to remain calm, as impatience had always been the greatest taboo in warfare. As long as they held out, Rimuru-sama would inevitably arrive. According to Rain's logic, they simply needed to fight moderately, carefully avoid Velzard-sama in her stampede state, and prioritize survival. Rain's words sounded rational on the surface, yet every sentence carried her usual self-preserving, cautious personality. She never pushed herself beyond what was safe, but ironically that mindset fit the situation perfectly. Rain added that the evacuation of all others had nearly been completed, and once finished, Misery, Moss, and Esprit could all join as reinforcements. With an offhand remark, she casually included Testarossa's and Carrera's subordinates among her own calculations. Guy clicked his tongue inwardly, speechless. But Rain was right. If Velzard were still rational, reinforcements like Moss and Esprit would be utterly useless. But now that Velzard had lost control, things were different. As long as they stayed cautious, they wouldn't die. They might even be able to help restrain Velzard a little. Still, Guy hesitated. Their goal wasn't to kill Velzard, but to restore her consciousness. And for Guy, this mattered more than anything. So why couldn't Guy handle it alone? Technically, he could. He needed to abandon his physical body, send his astral body into Velzard's core, and awaken her from within her spiritual world. But here was the problem. Facing a rampaging true dragon, the instant Guy's soul left his body, Velzard could destroy his physical form. The risk was too high. Guy didn't distrust Testarossa's group, but he understood Velzard's power far too well. Which meant Rain's approach, maintaining the stalemate, buying time, and waiting for Rimuru, was the safest plan. But for the embodiment of pride, Primordial Red Guy, the strongest demon lord, this strategy was a blow to his dignity. As Testarossa maintained Nihilistic world to counter Velzard's attacks, she also asked Guy whether he had a method to restore Velzard's sanity. Guy admitted he did, but not while maintaining his current skill. This was his honest answer, and Testarossa immediately understood. Since Guy was also using the void energy to defend, he could not spare any attention to attempt spiritual infiltration. Yes, Guy had mimicked Testarossa's technique after seeing it only once, Nihilistic world. Testarossa felt a mix of frustration and unwilling admiration. Guy's power was immeasurable, but having someone like him here was undeniably reassuring. Testarossa also knew that, with her own strength, she could barely maintain her void barrier against Velzard. There was no way she could assist Guy in a spiritual dive. She sighed, frustrated by her own limitations, but even more so by Rain's since Rimuru-sama is omnipotent, let's just wait for him mindset. And yet, after eliminating all high-risk options, Rain's self-serving logic had become the only optimal solution. Guy and Testarossa felt humiliated, but they had no choice. Thus, a ridiculous scene unfolded on the battlefield. All the primordial demons reached a unanimous agreement to wait for Rimuru. Carrera nodded repeatedly. Her attacks couldn't harm Velzard at all, but she understood that killing Velzard was never the objective. The only uncertainty was whether Velzard would truly become an ally, once all this was over. Of course, Testarossa and Guy shared the same worry. For Carrera, trusting Rimuru-sama and following the judgment of Guy and Testarossa was the smartest path. Rain, meanwhile, was even more laid back. If Carrera couldn't harm Velzard, then neither she, nor Misery, nor Moss would make any difference. In her view, as long as Guy-sama wished it, the battle could end at any moment. And since Rimuru-sama had safely returned to Central World, any difficult situation would eventually be resolved with him present. In this case, if Guy-sama and Rimuru-sama joined forces, Rain believed that nothing would be impossible. Just as everyone aligned on the same conclusion, a relaxed and cheerful voice echoed across the battlefield. Rimuru announced that he seemed to be just a tiny bit late, but seeing that everyone was safe, he felt relieved. With Rimuru's arrival, the tension that had been stretched to its limit instantly dissipated. That was Rimuru's power. Alright, that's all for this video. By the time this video released, Volume 23 would be out within a few hours. After 12 long years, this story was finally approaching its conclusion. Right now, the question on everyone's mind is probably why Veldanava had become like this. He had been a benevolent creator god, one who loved all beings, only to be betrayed and wounded by humanity. But even that didn't seem like enough reason for a creator god to turn into a world destroyer. Even if true dragons revived without memories, that alone felt insufficient to justify such a drastic shift. So, personally, I was eager to understand the full story as soon as possible. And from this episode, we could also feel how much the author loved Rain, putting immense effort into making her one of the most interesting characters in the entire TenSura universe. In our next episode, Guy would reveal his computationally specialized form, yes, the feminine one. But more importantly, in that form, Guy discovered that Diablo's existence points had already caught up to his own, and he still couldn't see through Rimuru. The next episode would be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support was greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.